What I love so much about the NBA and the game of basketball are the amazing storylines that come from various players, teams, coaches, based on their background, their history, and where they have been. I've always been a bit of a history nerd myself, so when I watched the Milwaukee Bucks win their first title in 49 years on Tuesday night, just their second in franchise history, and the sheer joy and emotion that we got to see from Giannis Antetokounmpo, it made me want to do a video on the incredible story of Giannis and his journey to the NBA, to becoming an MVP, to now an NBA champion. And yes, I know this video is a little late since the Bucks won on Tuesday night, but you know I wasn't going to miss out on Bulls hot takes for Wednesday, so I held off on this video until today for that reason. And yes, I know this is a Bulls channel, but every so often I also have other NBA related content, but don't worry, I will tie this back into the Bulls as well. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. So every season the NBA crowns a champion, obviously, and every year that it isn't the Bulls, I always sigh and wish that it was my team holding up the Larry O'Brien trophy. But in this instance, really ever since the Spurs won their last title in 2014, this was the first time that I was happy for the team that was crowned the NBA champion. And I know that might seem strange because Milwaukee, in a way, because of the proximity to Chicago, you would think that they would be seen as more of a rivalry. Well, I've always been a big Giannis fan, really ever since he entered into the league, purely because of the circumstances surrounding his upbringing and journey to the NBA. And year after year, we saw the Bucks, although would always have a solid regular season, would struggle to make a deep run into the playoffs. And you felt for Giannis because he was such a hard worker, such a great player, a great teammate. He had the desire to win. And rather than opting out of his contract and choosing to go to another team because things weren't going as planned in Milwaukee and try to chase rings in a bigger market like a lot of other players do, Kevin Durant, he stuck it out, re-signed with the team, came back, and was laser focused in these playoffs, especially in the finals, and won himself a championship. His performance in that closeout game was absolutely incredible, one of the best that I have ever seen since Michael Jordan. Now, for those that don't know, Giannis was drafted in 2013 with the number 15 overall pick, which was outside of the lottery, and most analysts at the time felt that this was a bit of a stretch because the guy was an international prospect coming out of Greece with not much of a resume, and although it was clear he had talent in terms of his athleticism, it was known that he wasn't a good shooter. He was pretty skinny, and most felt that he would likely get bullied in the NBA playing against the best grown men, the best players in the world in the game of basketball, than some of his local teams in Greece. Now, what makes Giannis' story so great is that, like a lot of NBA basketball players, they come from very humble beginnings, most of which lived a life of poverty. His parents were Nigerian and moved to Greece shortly after, or shortly before, I should say, Giannis was born in search for work. And throughout their time, they struggled to find gainful employment to the point where Giannis and his brother Thanis, who also plays in the NBA, by the way, helped provide for their family, selling handbags, watches, and other items on the streets as children just to make ends meet. Now, like most kids, him and his brothers looked for an escape when they weren't working to get away from the struggles of everyday life, and that's where they found basketball. Now, it's said that Giannis started playing basketball around 2007 when he was 13 years old, which is a little later for most kids, especially a lot of NBA basketball players who start at a very young age. Even myself, I started playing organized basketball when I was 7 years old. And it was quickly realized that Giannis and his brothers had a knack for the game of basketball, learning it quickly and it coming very natural to them. Well, just 4 years later, Giannis at the age of 17 signed with a semi-pro team in Greece, and just 1 year later he signed with a Spanish club professional team, and it was actually a 4-year contract, but obviously was bought out of that contract from the Spanish team when it was realized this kid had a lot of potential and would enter the NBA draft. Now, despite that potential, as I mentioned before, he wasn't seen as a top prospect, which is why he wasn't even selected in the lottery. And that's because he was seen as more of a project player. Well, that ended up actually being partially true because Giannis in his rookie season, he only averaged 6.8 points per game, 4.4 rebounds on 41% shooting from the field, and his defense, although solid, wasn't anything like it is what we see today. But for a rookie, it wasn't a bad rookie season, and he actually ended up making an all-rookie team. Now, what's funny is the following year, with the 2014 NBA draft, which was supposed to be one of the most stacked draft classes the league had ever seen, and really hasn't panned out to be the case so far, start, the Bucks had the number 2 pick in the draft, which they used to select Jabari Parker. And it was thought that Jabari would become the face of the franchise and the Bucks would build around him. Well, Giannis took a big leap in his sophomore season, improving on both ends of the floor, getting bigger, stronger, and more agile. He then continued to get better with every passing season, winning the Most Improved Player of the Year award in 2017, which also included his first All-Star selection, to then winning back-to-back MVPs and also winning the Defensive Player of the Year award in the same year, and the second MVP he won, which hasn't been done since Michael Jordan in 1998. He then goes now on to having 5 NBA All-Star selections, All NBA selections, and finally, after 8 years in the league, he wins what he coveted most, an NBA title and an NBA Finals MVP to go along with it. You're talking 14 years ago from the time that he picked up a basketball to everything that he has now accomplished, including an NBA title. It's a remarkable story, and I think what makes this story so remarkable is that even if Giannis never wins another title, even if he somehow starts to fall off as a player and declines, which won't happen since he's really in the peak of his prime right now, but even if that were to happen, he will forever be loved by the city of Milwaukee. He will forever be recognized as the player who didn't chase rings, who made a small market team relevant. And don't get me wrong, he had help. We can't not give props to guys like Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, or hell, even Bobby Portis, thanks Scarpax. But this was Giannis's team, and he led this team to the finals and scored 50 points in a closeout game. As great and incredible players like LeBron James and Kevin Durant are, what Giannis was able to do in winning this championship was unmatched in the titles that they won. And I'm not saying, well, this means that Giannis is now higher on the all-time great list than Kevin Durant or LeBron James. No, he's not. But he's also only 26 and could very well be on his way there. And to be honest, I think we're just seeing the beginning of Giannis Antetokounmpo flourish. And tying this all back to the Bulls, well, it's gonna suck, because really any team in the East is going to have to go through this guy to have a shot at a championship. It's like how players always feared Michael Jordan, knowing they would have to go through him at some point, and were ecstatic when he retired from the game to go play baseball because they actually felt like they had a chance at making a title run. And no, I'm not saying Giannis is on Michael Jordan's level, don't freak out on me in the comments, just that it's going to be very challenging if your team in the East is going to have to go up against Giannis Antetokounmpo, because he signed a supermax contract for the next 5 seasons. He's not going anywhere. And yeah, the Bucks were basically a Kevin Durant toe on the line away from being eliminated in the second round. To be honest, Coach Budenholzer might have been fired, and it's possible Giannis might have become disgruntled and requested a trade, which I'm sure teams were chomping at the bit for, but it didn't happen. KD's fat feet enabled the Bucks to advance by winning in overtime and on their way to the title. Giannis Antetokounmpo is now a 2-time MVP and an NBA champion, from selling jewelry on the streets of Greece as a kid to make ends meet, to now sitting with the Larry O'Brien Trophy, the highest paid player in the NBA, after signing a 5-year, $228 million contract, nearly $250 million. And his humble beginnings is what makes him so humble, loyal, and likable of a character that he is today. So congrats to Giannis, congrats to the Milwaukee Bucks, all of the players, coaches, and even their fans. It was a hell of a season, to say the least, with everything going on. Let me know what you guys thought about this final series and the rise of Giannis Antetokounmpo as a player. Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan or even just a general NBA fan, as I do upload daily. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.